PFL 2024 regular season action starts this Thursday from San Antonio, Texas. It is the heavyweights and the women's flyweights on the card this Thursday. 13 fights. This is, I believe, the third year we've done PFL predictions here on the channel. Again, it is different than, say, Bellator and the UFC in that the PFL does a season format where there is 2 regular season fights and then there is a playoff, or there's 2 playoff rounds, obviously the semifinals and the championship rounds of things. So it's a different format. Every fighter fights at least twice. There's standings, there's brackets, there's all that. And in past years, I haven't done this, but there's going to be a little bit of a change in the way that we do PFL predictions, at least graphics-wise. You'll see it after every fight. I will update the table, I guess, and the standings of what I think is going to happen this season with the PFL. So you're going to see that as we go on, but 13 fights in this card. And folks, if you haven't yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more MMA here on the channel. Yesterday, we posted our UFC Fight Night Chris Curtis versus Brendan Allen 2 full card predictions, so links in the description down below. We'll be back for the next 3 weeks here with the PFL because they have 3 straight weeks of cards, and of course the UFC as well. We're going to start things off here for the PFL with the showcase fights. These first 3 fights are not included in the season. So we start things off here with Bryce Meredith taking on Ty Johnson. Now, if you know who Bryce Meredith is, he is 5-0. This is a guy who was a college wrestler, a collegiate wrestler, and so far in Bellator, he is 2-0. He's one of those guys, of course, because the PFL did go out and buy Bellator. He's one of these guys that came from Bellator, and they were just kind of, pushing him by giving him lower level prospects, and eventually, like what they do with some of their guys, Aaron Pico is probably one of the best examples. They eventually push them to the point where they give them fights until they can fight guys in the top 10. Michael Venom Page was a huge guy that they did this with eventually, and then he lost to Lima, but then he, eventually worked his way back up, and now, hell, he's in the UFC in the top 15. But for Bryce Meredith, again, 2 fights so far in Bellator. It's a win over Brandon Carrillo at Bellator 293, and then a win just a couple months ago by unanimous decision. Obviously, Meredith is going to go to his wrestling a lot, and that's how he is effectively probably going to win most fights. He's fighting Ty Johnson, which probably should be his toughest opponent to date. This is a guy who's got a lot of experience. It's going to be his 20th professional fight, and he is on somewhat of a pretty solid winning streak, right? He's on a 7-fight winning streak. He won his last fight over an Anthony Pettis FC by unanimous decision over Motaz Askar, a 5-1 fighter. Not a horrible record for Ty Johnson. However, this fight should favor Bryce Meredith. I think, this is a somewhat of a jump for him, going from guys who are 2-0 and 1-0 professionally to a fighter who has had 20 professional fights. However, again, there are 6 losses on the record for Ty Johnson, and Bryce Meredith should be able to use his wrestling to pick up the victory, even though I do think this is going to be one of his tougher bouts, if not his toughest. Give me Meredith to win by unanimous decision. So on our next fight here, in the heavyweight division, the heavyweights are on this card. In the season format, this is not a season fight between Marcelo Golm and Jordan Heiderman. However, the winner of this fight will be the first replacement fighter if anyone in the season has to drop out. And I will say to you that this is still important because last year, the 205-pound champion, Impa Kasanganay, was an alternate. He won his first alternate bout early in the season against Corey Hendricks, and then he got his shot. Was it Corey Hendricks? I think it was Corey Hendricks, yeah. He won against Corey Hendricks, and then he eventually made his way into the season. He ended up winning the championship and winning $1 million, and now he's back in the season. I mean, the guy had a fight against Johnny Eblen, right? These fights are still important because more than likely, 1 out of the 10 guys in the season are going to drop out at some point due to an injury. So Jordan Heiderman and Marcelo Golm are fighting to be that number 1 alternate. For Heiderman, he got a shot last year in the PFL, right? He was in the season format. He won his first fight against Patrick Brady. Patrick Brady wasn't all that great. He won via a Brady knee injury, and then he got a shot in the playoffs because it was a first-round finish, and he lost to Dennis Goltsov, who we're going to talk about later in this card. You might know Heiderman best from his days in The Ultimate Fighter. He came into that season. This is season 30, so this is, I believe, the Juliana Pena season. Yes, the Juliana Pena, Amanda Nunes season. He wins his first fight where he wins by TKO in the 3rd round against Chandler Cole. It's a fight that's 1-1 going into the 3rd. Heiderman wins it. Then he runs into Zach Poundga after that. Poundga beats him by 2nd round TKO. Poundga, looked like he was the best fighter on that season in the heavyweight division. He now fights light heavyweight because, again, he was a light heavyweight going up just to fight on the show at 265. He just lost to Bogdan Guskov's last fight. Maybe the best fighter coming out of that season is Usman, who ended up winning it, even though I didn't think it was going to be Usman. But I guess, Usman and Battle were the best 2 guys on that show. They ended up winning the season. Wait, no, was Battle that season? Oh, God. Was that Battle season or was that... I don't know. I don't remember the Ultimate Fighter, who was on each season, but I remember Brian Battle won the Ultimate Fighter. He was the best fighter on that season. Was that Brian Battle season? I am trying to remember. Who else was the other weight class? Oh no, it was women's 125. Oh god, Juliana Miller won. Yeah, the women's side of things were not very good. Anyways, Jordan Heiderman, Marcelo Golm should be an interesting fight. I do think Golm is able to go out there and get the victory, though. I think Golm has fought the better guys. He's 10-4. He's from Bellator, obviously, right? He went 2-1 in that promotion. He did fight in the UFC a while ago, right? He made his UFC debut against Christian Colombo back in 2017 on a fight night card, main evented by Derek Brunson and Lyoto Machida. You likely know it best for the Covington Maia fight that was in the co-main event, but still. Right, Marcelo Golm beats Christian Colombo by first-round submission and loses to Tim Johnson, Arjun Bilar, and Sergey Pavlovich, which honestly are not the worst 3 losses you can take in the UFC. Comes to Bellator, right, beats Billy Swanson, picks up a huge win over Davion Franklin by submission in the 3rd round, and then got a main event spot in his last fight where he lost to Daniel James by TKO in the 3rd round. I do think Golm is way better than Jordan Heiderman, though. I think Heiderman is still very green. He's still young in his career, kinda. He's 32 years old, but in terms of MMA, he hasn't had many fights. Golm is actually the younger fighter, and I think he does win. Give me Marcelo Golm to win this fight by first-round knockout. Do not be surprised to see him later on in this season. Going on to our next fight here, this is just a featherweight. Actually, is this a backup fight? I don't think it is. Yeah, this is just a showcase fight, I do believe. Lucas Brennan, Dimitri Ivy in this fight. I think it's a backup. Maybe it's a backup fight. Wait, oh no, it's at 145. PFL doesn't have 145. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There's no 145-pound division because they have 55 instead. So this is just a showcase fight. This is basically just a Bellator fight. Lucas Brennan taking on Dimitri Ivy, but it's just under the PFL banner. Ivy's a guy who you might know from Fury FC, right? He fought in the main event over there at some point in time. Lost his last fight in Fury to Carlton Minus, a former UFC name. Won his last one against Abe Sellers on Bayou FC by submission in the 1st round. He's taking on Lucas Brennan, and obviously Lucas Brennan's going to be a huge favorite in this fight because he should be, right? Brennan comes into this fight 9-0 undefeated, all 9 of those wins in Bellator, now coming over to the PFL. He should win the fight, right? We're expecting him to take this one by first-round submission. That's how Brennan wins fights. When you look at his last 5 victories, all of them are by submission. 4 out of 5 of those are in the 1st round. One of them's in the 2nd round, or one of them's in the 3rd round. Sorry, all submissions except for one. One is a TKO win over Weber Almeida in his last fight. So Brennan, again, has shown an improved striking game along with his grappling. Brennan is the all-around better fighter here. This is a guy who, again, he's only 23 years old. He's on the Aaron Pico route, kind of, right? If this guy keeps on getting wins, you're going to see him at least at the top of Bellator eventually, or eventually in some PFL capacity in a season, right? I would expect at some point the PFL to expand. I think next year, I would assume they will go to 8 divisions as a whole. I think they should, but we'll see. Lucas Brennan, though, at 145 pounds, it should just beat the crap out of Dimitri Ivy here, whether it be on the feet and on the ground, because Ivy has been finished twice in the feet. He's been finished 4 times in the ground. This is a guy who's 12-7 professionally. This points to a Lucas Brennan victory. He should go out there and win. We're going to take him by first-round submission. Now we get into the season fights. We will start first here with Chelsea Hackett versus Jenna Bishop. We're taking Jenna Bishop by first-round submission. I think this is a mismatch because I don't think Chelsea Hackett's very good. No, okay, now, don't get me wrong, Jenna Bishop's only 6-0 professionally, right? But she is a primary grappler. She is a BJJ fighter. That's where she specializes in. She is somewhat old, right? She's 38 years old, but she still should beat the somewhat unexperienced fighter who's 14 years younger than her in Chelsea Hackett. Hackett's 1-0 in the PFL. She beat Kai Bennett by submission. Don't let that fight confuse you about what Chelsea Hackett is. Kai Bennett's not very good. She was 3-2 going into that fight. Watch Chelsea Hackett's fight. I know it's 4 years ago at this point, but she's had 1 fight in the last 4 years. But go watch her fight on the Contender Series. She's at least a 2-1 favorite against Victoria Leonardo. She's a -270 favorite against Leonardo back in 2020. And you know how Victoria Leonardo's UFC run went. It didn't go very well. Chelsea Hackett gets absolutely broken in that fight. She loses the fight by ground and pound in the 2nd round because she has 0 grappling when her opponent puts her down. That's what Jenna Bishop is going to do. She is going to push the pace, get Chelsea Hackett down, and it's going to be a quick night for Jenna Bishop. This is going to be absolutely huge for her. Bishop's going to win the fight by first-round sub. She's 2-0 in Bellator. Her last one coming over Elara Joanne by armbar in the 1st round, who we're going to talk about later on in this card. I think Bishop, again, they gave her a very good matchup, and this is going to be what's going to put her in the standings, as this is the new feature we're talking about here. We're going to put her first in the standings. Jenna Bishop's going to have 6 points in first for now. Chelsea Hackett is going to go in 10th, I guess, with 0 points. However, you look at the right side of the table here, you're gonna, it doesn't matter, right? You're gonna have 5 losers and 5 winners. The part that really matters is the 5 winners on the left and how they rank in terms of points, because of course you get 6 points for a first round finish, 5 points for a second round finish, and 4 points for a 3-point finish, and 3 points for a third round finish, and 3 points for a decision victory. So that's really what we're looking at here is the left side of the bracket. The right side of the bracket doesn't really matter until the next time these fighters fight in the regular season. So Hackett's, tied for last basically with 0 points, and Jenna Bishop right now with the tremendous start, getting her in first with 6 points. And again, that's huge because you look at what's going to happen as we go down the line here. The PFL values a first round submission or first round finish more than 2 decision victories. So she will already have a step up on all the fighters who, even another fighter who wins this week who gets 2 decisions, right? Like, she's gonna have such a huge advantage. This is how big getting finishes is in the PFL, because the top 4 make the playoffs, and Jenna Bishop with a first round submission victory win over Chelsea Hackett, because it's such a good matchup for her, is really gonna give her an advantage going forward, and it almost solidifies her as a playoff fighter. We'll see how it goes in the future, but for now, Jenna Bishop with 6 points. Okay, on to our next one here. We go back into the women's flyweight division. Kana Watanabe taking on Shanna Young. I feel like this is somewhat of a mismatch as well. I don't think very highly of Shanna Young. She's 9-5 professionally. She fights at a syndicate. She went 1-3 in the UFC. Now, who did she fight? Yeah, I mean, she lost to Macy Chasson, which was, I believe, a short notice call at bantamweight. She fights at 125 usually. Lost to Stephanie Egger at 135 as well, got finished. Beat Gina Mazzani, who is not a UFC caliber fighter. Lost to Miranda Maverick, got dominated, lost the fight by unanimous decision, just got wrestled the entire fight. And then in her next fight, she won on the PFL Challenger Series, winning a fight by unanimous decision against the fighter she's supposed to beat. And that's kind of been it for Shanna Young. She lost in the contender when she got a shot over there. She lost to Sarah Alpar, who Alpar never turned out to be anything in the UFC either. Yeah, I don't really know what to expect out of Shanna Young here. I will expect Kana Watanabe to just run right through her. And I know Watanabe hasn't had, the best run in the Bellator's 125-pound division, but she's beat names, right? She beat Alara Joanne in her first fight by ground and pound in the 3rd round. She beat Alejandra Lara by split decision. Got a fight against Liz Carmouche where the winner was going to fight for the championship, and Carmouche knocked her out in the 1st round. TKO'd her, standing TKO. Tremendous performance and a good win for Liz Carmouche. But, again, Liz Carmouche is the Bellator champion, so no shame in losing that fight, right? I know Carmouche blitzed her and pushed her back up against the fence and really just got in there and got out, but still Watanabe loses. She beats Denise Keoholtz, which I didn't think she was going to beat Keoholtz. She submits her in the 2nd round, loses a close fight to Alima Leigh McFarland that maybe she should have won, and then beat Veda Ortega in her last fight by unanimous decision. Yeah, Watanabe should run right through Shanna Young in this fight. She should dominate positionally everywhere in this fight, whether it be on the ground or on the feet. I really especially like the ground game out of Watanabe, and I could see her getting a submission in this fight. However, we're going to play the safe route. It's women's MMA. We're going to take her by unanimous decision, but of course, fighters will be chasing the finish in this fight, because if you get the finish, of course, it helps you later on in the season. But we're taking Kana Watanabe to go out here and pick up the victory. We're taking her by unanimous decision. As we relook at the table, Watanabe now enters 2nd place with 3 points. Shanna Young is in 9th place with 0 points. But this is the point I was making earlier about Jenna Bishop, right? 6 points is huge for her, because if she loses her next fight and Kana Watanabe wins by decision again, Jenna Bishop gets the tiebreaker, because one finish, even if you go 1-1, has more weight than 2 decisions if you get a first round finish. So that's huge for Jenna Bishop again, because at this point, Kana Watanabe would need to finish her next opponent to jump Jenna Bishop in the rankings, or in the standings in the table, or in the standings on the table for the PFL's women's flyweight division. Okay, let's go back now, and we're starting in the heavyweight division here. We've got Oleg Popov taking on Steve Mowry. So both these guys are Bellator fighters, right? Mowry is 10-1-1 professionally. Popov is 16-1. Popov's extremely boring. He really is. And, well, okay, the one fight he's had in a major organization, it was garbage against Gokhan Sarikam in his last fight. He beats him by unanimous decision. He just lays on him for 15 minutes. Really doesn't look to do much damage. Really doesn't look to strike at all. Doesn't really look for any submissions. Values position a lot and just kind of lays on Gokhan in that fight. He knows he can get the takedown whenever he needs to, and he just kind of sits on him and lays on him for 15 straight minutes. Can he do that against Steve Mowry? It will be interesting. Mowry, though, has not won a fight since 2021, and he does have submission skills. He's got his go-to submission is the Kimura, right? He can win fights in the feet as well, but when Mowry has faced that upper echelon of opponents, he hasn't really won, right? He went through guys like, okay, he has a win over Gokhan as well, the guy that Oleg Popov just beat. He beats Sean Asher, beats Rakeem Cleveland by Kimura, but then he gets the tougher opponents. The Moldavsky fight, we're going to talk about Valentin Moldavsky, who's in the main event tonight against Ante Delija. We'll talk about that later, but again, that fight ends in an eye poke in under a minute. The Ali Isaev fight, the unanimous decision, a draw in that fight, a unanimous draw. He loses the rematch Mowry does to Moldavsky, and now here we are against Oleg Popov. I think he's gonna have a real tough time dealing with this overwhelming wrestling game that Popov brings. It's not fun to watch. Let's just be honest with ourselves. It's not entertaining. It just really isn't. That's just not the way he fights. But he will get on you, he will lay on you, and he will just kind of sit there, right? You know, when you look at his fights outside of Bellator, right, it is more, you know, he does go for it more. You see the striking game. And I think maybe that is where Popov does expand his game for this fight against Mowry. Again, it has been 14 months since he has last fought. And I do think we're going to see more of a game out of him in this one, just showcasing all of his skills and all of his tools like we saw outside of, you know, Bellator. His last one before going to Bellator was over Bigfoot Silva, right? And it's just like, you know, Bigfoot Silva won in his big losing streak. He had a draw against Juan Espino just last week, but Espino wasn't trying to finish him. So I really don't put much into that. I mean, again, Bigfoot's lost, you know, what, 9 straight fights, I do believe. He hasn't won a fight since UFC 190 in 2015 in Brazil. Ronda Rousey, Betch Correia was the main event. That just kind of shows you how long Silva has lost for. But Popov did beat him. He actually tried to beat him and obviously just kept him standing and knocked him out. Because anyone who hits hard at 265 pounds will be able to beat Bigfoot Silva at this point in time. So again, not putting too much weight under that victory. But Popov, again, he has shown more striking outside of the one fight he had in Bellator, but the win over Sadikam was just grappling. That's it. I think it will be a lot of wrestling, and I think that overall Sambo game is going to be enough to beat Steve Mowry in this fight. Give me Oleg Popov to win the fight by unanimous decision. Again, quick look at the table. Not going to spend too much time on this one right here, but again, Oleg Popov in first place with 3 points. That might change, obviously, heavyweight division. You're probably going to see guys get finishes as we go down the line here, but for now, Popov in first with 3 points. Mowry obviously enters the loser side of the table, which is the right side, with 0 points. Okay, on our next fight here, back in the women's flyweight division, Bellator/PFL, I'm not even going to call it Bellator, PFL debut for Taila Santos in this fight. Now, I still don't know why Taila Santos is not in the UFC. I believe it's because her contract expired, right? That's the only thing that makes sense. Because Taila Santos, if she was still in the UFC, would arguably be, she would be somewhere in the top 5. Somewhere. Now, we can talk about Aaron Blanchfield, Manon Fior, and in that last fight in Atlantic City, horrible main event. Fior did not go for it. Fior, okay, partially because she didn't need to, but Fior stood there and let Aaron Blanchfield blitz her 24/7, and, you know, Fior would catch her every single time, couldn't put Blanchfield away, but that fight was horrible. It looked like, you know, Blanchfield just looked like a 115-pounder in that fight. Will she go down? No, I don't think so, but again, Blanchfield's 24 too, so like I don't put too much weight in that. I think Blanchfield eventually will still become champion someday. I think she will. Give her 5 years when she enters her prime. I think she will be the champion someday. But when you look at Taila Santos, if she was still in the UFC's women's flyweight division, she'd arguably be top 5. I think personally Macy Barber is better than Aaron Blanchfield right now, so I put Macy Barber at 5, I put Manon Fior at 4, I put Taila Santos at 3, I put Shevchenko at 2, I put Grasso at 1. Arguably, though, I think Santos could beat Shevchenko right now, and I also think she could beat Grasso as well right now. I truly think so. And we are going to see how good Santos is, because by far the favorite for the PFL's flyweight division is Taila Santos. It has to be. I know there's Liz Carmouche, I know there's Dakota Ditcheva, but Taila Santos has to be the favorite, right? She lost a fight to Aaron Blanchfield by decision. And I know, again, I put her ahead of Blanchfield in the rankings. I think in a rematch, maybe Taila Santos, after seeing what Blanchfield did to Santos in that first fight, maybe Santos can be here. But I kind of did forget about that whole equation that, she did lose to Blanchfield. So maybe she shouldn't be as high as I put her in the rankings, right? Because I put, in my personal top 5, I put Macy Barber ahead of Blanchfield. Maybe that's unfair to Aaron Blanchfield. Maybe that's just recency bias on her last fight, just because she wasn't able to take down Manon Fior. All right, so maybe that's bias on my part. That's my mistake. But still, Santos, you look at the fight she has against Valentina Shevchenko, you can make the case she beat Shevchenko. It's close. I thought Shevchenko got it razor thin, but I think it was ridiculous Santos didn't get the immediate rematch. And, you know, again, the UFC's women's flyweight division is is a victim of the fact that Shevchenko and Grasso have to fight 3 times in a row. And that's the problem with Manon Fior. And the problem with her is that she's probably going to have to fight Macy Barber. I think that's what they're going to do. They're kind of going to have her fight Macy Barber. I think Blanchfield's going to have to fight Namajunas at this point. So they're probably going to do Blanchfield and Namajunas probably in the Apex, right? And they'll put Fior and Barber in France in September. 100%, because they're not going to have Fior wait until the summer of next year or at the earliest spring of next year to fight the winner of Grasso Shevchenko, which is likely going to happen in the Sphere in September. So they will probably have Fior fight again, which is crazy because she will have a Namajunas, Blanchfield, and then Barber get a title fight. It's crazy. But that's the problem with Shevchenko and Grasso fighting 3 times back to back to back, right? The difference between this and, say, when Stipe Miocic fought DC 3 times in a row, DC fought Derek Lewis in between. So that kept the weight class going a little bit. I know we had the problem with Francis Ngannou, and Ngannou kept going through guys. Eventually he got the title shot, right? He had to beat Dos Santos. He had to beat Rosenstruik, right? He beat all those guys. But still, the difference with that in the UFC's flyweight division is that, again, we're still waiting. DC did fight Derek Lewis to kind of move the division along, right? To send away one of the challengers because Lewis beat Volkov to get that shot, right? But it's a problem. And so I think that's what's going to happen. And enough talking about the UFC's flyweight division. Going back to this fight, keep it simple. Tyler Santos is going to destroy Ilara Joanne in this fight. I think Joanne is the second worst fighter in this PFL division right now. I think so. There's going to be one that you're going to see later I think is worse than Ilara Joanne. But Joanne's 3-4 in Bellator, wins over Beck Rawlings, who has got a negative record. Alejandra Lara, by far her best win is Denise Kielholtz, which is kind of crazy because Kielholtz was originally supposed to be Santos' opponent. Kielholtz drops out, so Joanne, who has beat Kielholtz, replaces her. But the losses. Joanne lost to Bishop. Right now, we have Jenna Bishop in first place, right? Bruna Ellen beats her by unanimous decision. Kana Watanabe beats her. Vanessa Porto beats her. Not bad losses, but again, Tyler Santos, look at the way she dominates Joanne Wood. Look how hard Tyler Santos hits at this weight class and the fashion that she's able to win on the ground as well. I think Santos will drop Joanne in the second round. I think she will get a submission. So this is second round sub. I know I'm covering it, but still, we can look at the table now. Tyler Santos enters second place with 5 points. Again, Ilara Joanne enters the losers side of the table, but for Tyler Santos, 5 points puts her in second place behind Jenna Bishop. I do think she will get a submission eventually. I think it's just a matter of time in this fight before she rocks Joanne, and then she gets the fight on the ground, and she's able to get the finish down there. Whether it be by TKO or by submission, I think Santos eventually does get the finish, and we're going to put her second place in the table with 5 points. Putting her above Kana Watanabe, which is big. Okay, on to our next one here. Back in the heavyweight division, it is the, same banner. Right, okay, Blagoy Ivanov used to fight in World Series of Fighting. He was the former World Series of Fighting heavyweight champion. That became the PFL. So he has fought here before, but he has not fought under the official PFL banner, right? His last fight he did fight in the PFL banner. I forgot. He fought in 2017. Okay, right before they did turn into, right when they did turn into PFL, he did fight one fight in the PFL. It was one of those, but it wasn't the season format. It was called PFL Fight Night, right? So Timur Valiev was on this card, Lance Palmer was on. It was only 4 fights on NBC Sports, right? It was channel 81, I believe it used to be. Is that still a channel? I don't even know. I don't watch cable like that much anymore. It's just ESPN and professional wrestling channels for me. But for Blagoy Ivanov, right? Leaves PFL / World Series of Fighting. That was, by the way, after a Bellator run where it capped off him losing in the championship fighting to Alexander Volkov in Bellator. But he goes to World Series, right? He goes undefeated there, becomes the World Series champion, comes in the UFC, loses the fight to Junior Dos Santos, comes back, beats Ben Rothwell, beats Taito Ivasa, gave him tough fights though. He loses a split decision to Derek Lewis, loses to Gusev Sakai, beats Marcos Rodrigo de Lima, who is in the top 15 in the UFC's heavyweight division right now, loses to Marcin Tybura, loses to Alexander Romanov. Those are all top 15 guys. Now say what you want about Romanov. Is he the best? I don't know. But Blagoy is still a top 20 guy in the UFC. He's taking on Sergey Bilostenniy in this fight. And for Bilostenniy, he was originally supposed to fight Bruno Capoloza on this card. Capoloza pulled out. Capoloza was favored to beat Bilostenniy in this fight. Bilostenniy 1-1 in Bellator. He has a loss to Tyrell Fortune and a win over Kasim Aras. He beats Aras, and it looks really good, right? It's the spinning back kick, just completely takes him out. It's in the first round, Bellator 299. Incredible finish. But again, Tyrell Fortune was able to finish him in the first round as well. We'll see. I think, Blagoy's got a crazy chin on him. It is tough to knock out Blagoy Ivanov. And if you ever doubt the chin of this guy, by the way, never been knocked down in his career, if you doubt his chin, go watch the beating he takes against Yuri Santos. He doesn't win a round in that fight, but he eats every single punch JDS throws at him. It's a fight night main event in Boise, Idaho, something I miss from the UFC, them going to random cities and having fights every single week, even though, okay, real quick, I'm going to go on my anti-Apex tangent. For as bad as the UFC's Atlantic City card was, and how many stupid things happened with all the eye pokes, it was still 10 times better than the Apex. Imagine if Chris Weidman poked Bruno Silva in the eye 3 times in the Apex and then celebrated. It would not have had nearly the effect it had of when he poked Bruno Silva in the eye 4, 5 times, 3 times, whatever, and then celebrated like he won by knockout. Still, the crowd went batshit crazy. They loved it, right? When Nate Landwehr won, I don't care how bad the card is. You have to put them in the Apex, or out of the Apex. Like, the Chris Curtis card should be in a random city this week. Put that thing in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and it will sell. But the UFC just hates the fans, and they're going to keep him in the Apex. Anyways, Blagoy Ivanov, Sergey Bilostenniy. I think Ivanov actually wins, because it's so hard to knock this guy out. He's fought. He took punches from Tai. He went 15 minutes with Tai Tuivasa and ended up winning by decision. He went 15 minutes with Derek Lewis. It's so hard to knock this guy out. I don't think Bilostenniy is going to be the guy to crack the chin, even though I know Blagoy Ivanov is 37 years old at this point. But Blagoy is that tough, and I think Blagoy is going to keep walking Sergey down in this fight. I just think skill for skill in the feet, he is the better boxer against Sergey Bilostenniy in this fight. I think he is just truly better stand-up wise. I think he's going to keep pushing forward. He's going to put somewhat of a pace on Sergey here, and I don't think he's going to allow Sergey Bilostenniy to throw those big power shots and those big kicks. He will work the body a lot. Like, he was setting up the spinning back kick with Aras by hitting the body before he went up to the head. Still, though, I think Blagoy is good enough. I don't think Blagoy is, if he does get hit with something like that, I think he'll stay in the fight and think he will keep on pushing forward and, not be deterred from something like that. So I think Blagoy wins. I like him in his PFL debut here, I guess, is, welcome back to the party to the PFL. Blagoy Ivanov by unanimous decision. You check the table here. You got Popov and Ivanov tied. Again, 1 and 2 doesn't really matter here. They are tied with 3 points. That will all sort itself out in the next card that they do fight. Sometimes when this happens, the PFL and 2 guys have 3 points. They both win by decision. They just throw them together in a fight. So, potentially Popov and Ivanov could just fight in the next one. Bilostenniy joins Steve Mowry on the right side of the bracket or on the table with 0 points. It is what it is. We'll check back in with this later as we go on to our next one. Going back to the women's flyweight division, we have got one of the favorites, Dakota Ditcheva, taking on Lisa Mauldin. There is no question who wins this fight. It will be Dakota Ditcheva, and I think she wins the fight by first round knockout. The bigger question in this fight is, how good will Dakota Ditcheva look? And the bigger question is, who does Dakota Ditcheva fight next? Knowing the PFL, I think she will fight Ilara Joanne next, because that is the next easiest fight, because they want to preserve Ditcheva as long as possible, to the point where she gets to fight the 4th ranked fighter going into the playoffs, which might be Jenna Bishop. It's a very winnable fight, and through that, Ditcheva will not have to fight. I might give away one of my predictions right here. She won't have to fight the winner of Juliana Velasquez and Liz Carmouche versus Tyler Santos until the finals. I think that's kind of what they're angling for here, because I think Dakota Ditcheva does beat Lisa Mauldin by first round knockout. Okay, if you don't know who Dakota Ditcheva is, she's been booked all right so far in the PFL, right? She won the PFL Flyweight Championship in PFL Europe. She went 3-0 over there against not the best fighters, right? She won the championship fight against a 2-1 Valentina Scatizzi by TKO in the first round of his swollen eye was shut. Because Ditcheva does put these beatings on these fighters because she's just so much better than them, right? Ditcheva is so much more talented than all these other women's flyweights that they do have, at least in PFL Europe, right? She's undefeated. She is they like to call her their Ronda Rousey. Lisa Mauldin is 6-3. Should she really be here? No. She won 2 fights in the PFL against fighters that she was supposed to lose to, I'll be honest, right? She's a plus 320 underdog against Helen Peralta, who you might know from The Ultimate Fighter. She beats Peralta by 3rd round TKO, and then she beats Dirty Des Yanez by first round submission in her last fight. I will give Mauldin something. She is very tough. However, Ditcheva will break her in the span of 5 minutes. I do think so, and I think it might even be quicker. I think Ditcheva seriously is that good, and she is going to break Mauldin. However, again, she's good, but is she on the upper echelon level that some of these flyweights are on? Because, again, this is one of the most stacked seasons that PFL has had. because of all the Bellator names. We'll talk about that in full when we see the final table. For now, Dakota Ditcheva wins by first round TKO, instantly putting herself in the first place here on the bracket, or in the table. I keep mixing that up. I think she'll get the finish quicker than Jenna Bishop gets it against Chelsea Hackett. That's how they score things, right? So if Ditcheva and Bishop both have 6 points, it's whoever got the finish quicker is higher on the table or in the standings. I think Ditcheva gets it quicker than Bishop, putting her in first place. Okay, so the PFL Europe champion Dakota Ditcheva goes into first for now. We have one more fight to go, but we'll get to that fight when we get to it, because first, back in the heavyweight division, Daniel James takes on Tyrell Fortune. It is a rematch of their fight, I want to say a year and a half ago, give or take, right? Daniel James has had a good Bellator run so far, right? I know he loses to Gokhan Sadiq in his last fight by unanimous decision, but he comes into Bellator and immediately beats Tyrell Fortune. He beats him by TKO at the end of the second round. Or the beginning of the second round, sorry. Now, Daniel James did pop for some illegal substance. I'm not completely sure what it is, but still, it was enough for him to still get the main event in his next Bellator fight and beat Marcelo Golm by third round knockout. Okay. What changes? Can Tyrell Fortune out-wrestle Daniel James in this fight? I don't know. I think Daniel James has a very good chance of beating him again. I know Tyrell Fortune's coming off a win over Sergey Bilostenniy. Sure, that's great. But he loses to Daniel James. He beats Rakeem Cleveland, who everyone's lost to. He loses to Linton Vassell. Okay, well, Vassell, again, we're going to see him later. He beats Matt Mitrione, but Mitrione was well past his prime at that point. I think the same thing happens again. I think Daniel James is going to beat him. I think, again, Fortune's been knocked out before. He's been finished before. Tim Johnson did it. Of course, Daniel James did it. I think the American Predator does it again. I know he's 42 years old, but Daniel James has been good so far in this return. I know in this, re-emergence, I guess, right? Since coming back on the scene here, or at least in America, right? He was a big guy. He was a big fighter in ACA. He fought over there a lot. He fought in their heavyweight division over in Russia. I think Daniel James continues the run he's been on here in the States. I think he beats Tyrell Fortune. He's going to do it the same exact way he did it last time. I think second round knockout win for Daniel James. We go back to the table here, and with that finish, Daniel James immediately puts himself in first place on the table. He has 5 points. He is ahead of Oleg Popov, and he is ahead of Blagoy Ivanov. And Tyrell Fortune, of course, joins Bilostenniy and Mowry in the losers side of things with 0 points. But of course, they can still come back, and this is huge again, because Popov and Ivanov both have 3 points. For Fortune, or Bilostenniy, or Mowry, a first-round finish in your next fight will have more weight in the standings than Popov and Ivanov winning another fight by decision. So it does keep everyone really in things with heavyweights, considering if there are decisions, it's real easy to come back and just get your name right back in the swing of things because of how common first-round finishes are, right? So it's not over for the guys on the right. It's going to be a lot easier to come back in the standings for the heavyweights than it is for the women's flyweights. We'll just say that, right? Okay. On to our next fight. We'll round out the women's flyweights by going to this fight, which confuses me. Liz Carmouche, Juliana Velasquez. Now, the PFL has never had a set way that they have told people how they book their fights. Personally, I think there should be a show, there should be a selection show. Do it like March Madness, but do it like the NBA lottery and March Madness combined, or, MLB does a lottery too, right? Put 10 balls in a machine and randomly draw fighters who are going to fight each other. It would be the most entertaining way for things to happen. The only difference in the second round of things for the second event for the regular season is that fighters can't repeat. They can't fight the same fighter again in the second fight of the season. But they should do a thing where, all right, we're going to randomize it, and Carmouche is just randomly fighting Velasquez. The way it is right now, there is no system. Guys just fight, they just randomly assign fighters who they think, because that's how the PFL kind of gets their way sometimes on who they want to get to the playoffs, because they give the worst fighters to the guys who they want to win. Right? Okay. I'm not saying they're doing that here because they're really not. This is why this fight doesn't make sense. Because Juliana Velasquez has not fought since the 2 times she lost to Liz Carmouche. She lost to Carmouche twice in 2022. She lost both of them by finish for the championship. The first one was a TKO in the 4th round, was an early stoppage by Mike Beltran. Maybe. But still, Carmouche wins. They do it again. Carmouche submits her in the 2nd round. She has not fought since. She was booked against Paula Cristina. Fight never happened. It was supposed to be 11 months after the Liz Carmouche fight. Didn't happen. Carmouche has fought twice since the 2 Velasquez wins. She beats Deanna Bennett in a mismatch. She submits her in the 4th round, and she TKOs Alima Lay McFarland at Bellator 300. And now here she is. She's fighting a fighter that she's already beat twice. Liz Carmouche and Taila Santos are the favorites in this season. Liz Carmouche will win this fight by third round TKO. Eventually, she will get the finish. I think it'll be on the ground. Carmouche will get it, getting her 4 points. As we look to the table here, and I'll talk about the favorites when we get to the table right now. Okay, Carmouche slides in at 4th place. So this is the full table going into the second event of the PFL's women's flyweight division, right? First place, Dakota Ditcheva with 6 points. Second place, Jenna Bishop with 6 points. Third place, Taila Santos with 5 points. Fourth place, Liz Carmouche with 4 points. Fifth place, with the decision, Kana Watanabe with 3 points. Everyone else on the right side of the table. Okay. Right now, Ditcheva would get Liz Carmouche, Jenna Bishop would get Taila Santos, Kana Watanabe would be on the outside looking in because the top 4 make the playoffs. Okay. Still though, Carmouche and Santos are the best fighters. They just gave them tougher matchups, I think. If you give Taila Santos, Lisa Mauldin, if you get Liz Carmouche, Lisa Mauldin, if they give them Alara Joanne, I know I said it'll take Santos the round, but if you give, again, both those fighters, Lisa Mauldin, they probably finish her in the first round. If they give her Chelsea Hackett, they probably finish her in the first round. Even Shanna Young. I think the PFL has got in there 4 fighters right away. Seriously. Because I think it's going to be, it's either, okay, it's incredibly tough for any of the fighters on the right side of the bracket to make the playoffs now. I think it's going to be these, it's going to be a combination of the 5 on the left. The one I don't know about is Watanabe Bishop. What I'd expect, honestly, from the PFL, they're going to do Watanabe and Bishop next, and the winner of that fight will get into the playoffs, because those are the 2 fighters I really don't care about. But still, Ditcheva should be well on her way to the first seed, I do believe. Right now, we have her against Carmouche. I don't think that will stand, but for now, that's what we have as the regular season standings for the PFL's women's flyweight division as of the first week. Okay. Going back to the heavyweight division, we've got 2 more fights before we end things here. The co-main event is Dennis Goltsov taking on Linton Vassell. So Vassell, of course, coming over from Bellator. He is a British fighter. He's 24-8. He's on a 5-fight winning streak. He was supposed to fight Ryan Bader at Bellator 300 for the heavyweight championship. Vassell withdrew from the fight. Obviously, Bader then got booked against the PFL's heavyweight champion, Inhalan Ferreira. He lost by knockout in the first round. Bader is still, of course, the Bellator's heavyweight champion. Don't know who he's going to fight next. Seriously, there are no fights for him right now. So I don't know what's going to happen. We'll see. They'll find someone for Bader. Logistically, they'll find someone. I don't know. But anyways, because they can drop PFL names now too, right? So like someone from the PFL can just come over and fight Ryan Bader. I would not be surprised if it's Ryan Bader and Bruno Capelloza next to the Bellator Heavyweight Championship. I would not be surprised in the slightest. Even though I know Capelloza just dropped out, but like still they need a name. Capelloza has won the PFL Championship before. They can book it against they can say champion versus champion again, right? Okay. Dennis Goltsov, Linton Vassell. So Linton Vassell's on a big winning streak, right? Wins over Sergey Karatinov by TKO in the second round. He beats Ronnie Marks by second round TKO. He beats Charles Fortune by split decision. Beats Tim Johnson by knockout in the first round. Beats Valentin Moldavsky by first round knockout. Bellator 292, a fight that I was at in San Jose, California. He did go on a 3-fight losing streak, right? He lost to Moldavsky in their first fight. He lost to Phil Davis, lost to Ryan Bader. Okay, right, he's supposed to get his Bader rematch, never got it. That was at light heavyweight, though. Vassell has been good at heavyweight other than his first fight in the division against Valentin Moldavsky. We will see again PFL versus Bellator here. These are 2 upper-level guys in both their weight classes. This is like Bellator's third-ranked guy against the PFL's third-ranked guy. Seriously, right? Because I'd put Delija and Ferreira over Goltsov because obviously they both beat him. And then for Vassell, I guess I'd put Bader for now over him. And actually, maybe that's it. Maybe he's second. I don't know. Again, Bellator's heavyweight division is so bad. No, actually, I would put one. I don't. There's no one else I'd put over him right now in Bellator. Anyways, so again, these are 2 somewhat top guys in both the divisions. I think Vassell's just better. Again, Goltsov's coming off a championship loss where he lost in the second round against Hernan Ferreira. He was a -270 favorite. I thought Goltsov was going to run right through him. I thought Ferreira was overrated. I still think he's a little bit overrated. But still, he lose to Ferreira. Now he gets Linton Vassell here. How does Goltsov win? He should take Vassell down. That's his best shot here, is if he takes Vassell down. Because Vassell has lost, right? Bader took him down and, ground and pounded him out to victory. Emmanuel Newton back in 2014 submitted Vassell for the Bellator Light Heavyweight Championship. I know it was a long time ago. Emmanuel Newton, I don't think fights anymore, right? Yeah, okay. I didn't know this. Emmanuel Newton at some point in time was booked against Yuri Prohashka. Never fought him. Thank God for that. But right, like, he's been stopped on the ground before. I know Phil Davis head kicked him and knocked him out, but for Goltsov, that's his best pathway to victory. However, Vassell's hands are just better. I know he's 40 years old. He's older than Goltsov, but still, I just think his striking is so much better than Goltsov's. Goltsov was just finished 5 months ago. That is enough time for the chin to heal. But I'm taking Lyndon Vassell to win the fight, and I think he does get it done pretty early. We're taking Lyndon Vassell by first round knockout, and instantly, Lyndon Vassell, who was the Bellator #1 contender at 265 pounds, puts himself in first place at the PFL table. He's in first, Daniel James in second, Oleg Popov in third, Blagoy Ivanov in fourth, and then all of the losers. But this table will be filled after the conclusion of this fight in the main event. Ante Delija taking on Valentin Moldavsky. We're taking Ante Delija by first round knockout. I don't think this one's too controversial. I really don't think it is. I know Moldavsky's coming off win over Steve Mowry, but Moldavsky has shown in the past he's not the biggest finisher of fights. He doesn't hit the hardest, and his chin isn't the greatest either. Ante Delija will knock you out. Ante Delija at some point was booked against Cito Gane in the UFC back in 2020. He came to PFL, lost his first fight to Bruno Capoloza, won a fight against Chandler Cole, beats Denise Goltsov, loses to Capoloza in the championship fight. Comes back the next year, beats Mateusz Scheffel, beats Shelton Graves, beats Hanan Vera, beats Mateusz Scheffel. He's the world champion. In 2023, he got injured before the first fight of the season against Yorgan De Castro. I believe it was supposed to be the main event of that card. Crazy, I know. And then fights Maurice Green the second time out, beats him by decision, but again, doesn't have enough points to get to the playoffs. He hasn't fought since. Delija, though, again, Maurice Green's somewhat of a tricky guy to fight. He's 6'7", he's got an 82-inch reach. Moldavsky's 6'1". This is a much easier fight for Delija because Delija is huge. He's 6'5". Like, him and Fed are both monsters, right? I believe Goltsov's like, 6'4"? I think Goltsov's big too, right? He's 6'5" too. Again, yeah, they've got some huge heavyweights. Delija is going to be much bigger than Valentin Moldavsky in this fight. He will hit a lot harder than Valentin Moldavsky as well. I'll make the case he hits harder than Lyndon Vassell. I really think he does. Delija hits hard. I know, again, he didn't finish Green in his last fight. It took him a while to get going in that one, but this one I think he should be going right out the gates, and I think he should be able to really punch Moldavsky's head in here. Moldavsky, I don't think he's going to be able to tie up with him. I don't think he's going to be able to have a lot of success with the wrestling. I think Ante Delija, again, really shows why he is potentially the favorite here. I think him and Vassell are the two favorites this season. I think Blagoy Ivanov is a really nice, good-looking dark horse in this fight, in this season as well, but Delija is going to come out here and show why he is the favorite. Delija, the former PFL champion, is going to win. He goes into first place with 6 points. So when we look at the final table here for the PFL's heavyweight division, in first place, Ante Delija with 6 points. I think he gets the finish faster. Then in second place is Lyndon Vassell's finish with 6 points as well. Daniel James in third place with the second round finish over Tyrell Fortune gets him 5 points. Oleg Popov and Blagoy Ivanov are tied, both with 3 points, both in fourth and fifth place. And the others, Moldavsky, Goltsov, Fortune, Bilostenniy, and Mowry are all in the loser's side of the bracket. So folks, that'll do it for our PFL predictions here on the first PFL event of the year in 2024. Always like doing PFL cards. I think they're really fun, especially because you can track the standings and, what guys need, especially as you get later in the season. You can track what guys need to get into the playoffs compared to what other guys need. It's fun. We'll see as we keep going here with the PFL season. But again, for now, that will do it, folks. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to like if you did enjoy the video. We'll be back next week for another PFL video. We will have the lightweights and the light heavyweights coming at you from Las Vegas, Nevada, and also this Sunday, we're going to have our UFC 300 predictions as well. It's a stacked card, and I can't wait to break it down. So, folks, thank you all for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. Folks, thank you all for watching, and Mamba forever.